Good morning, Rabbi Sai. It is Erev Tisha B'Av, and we covered Tisha B'Av. We're not gonna do as many emails as we usually do. I will show you this picture of a camp. I don't do the daf. I do every day, only occasionally. I have Daf Yomi buddy. Oh, he says that I once mentioned about this buddy system that in order to make sure that you stay on the daf, you get another person to do it with you. You don't do the daf with them, but they keep up with each other. You tell them you did the daf, you didn't do the daf, which is your idea. And we make sure that the other one did the daf every day. My Daf Yomi buddy is Ellis Weinstein from Lakewood. And Baruch Hashem has not missed one day in Bava Basra. He's currently in camp Mechaya for the summer. And he made a matzav out of learning the daf in camp. And started giving a small share daily on the daf, of course, while wearing an MDY cap. Of course. Other people are learning from you to encourage people to learn the daf and make a geshmak matzav out of it. Hashem should give you the koyach. Continue doing what you're doing. Zachus that we should merit Mashiach b'korov. Amen. Binyan Beis Hamikdash b'korov. Rolling right into the sponsors, I do want to remind the Olam that you should reserve the date. December 20th to 22nd is our Shabbaton. Last year it sold out. We're doing the same place, Armon in Connecticut. It was one of the most magnificent Shabbosim I've ever had, and many other people said the same thing. I remember it was right when the war started, and a few people didn't want to come because of the war, and we asked Shilas to Rabbanim, and they said, yeah, and then those who came did not regret it. It was very, very inspiring, and it was an emotional Shabbos, very emotional. It was fun, yet inspiring. It recharged the battery. So it's kedai not to miss. Hopefully they'll have enough rooms available. Right now, the website is open to sponsors only. I think that's going to last for about a week or so, and then it's going to be open to those. I promised everybody that came last year that we'll give them the opportunity to book first. So it'll be open for one day for those people who were there last year, and then it's going to be open to the Olam. Right now, one sponsor came in and took 25 rooms. Another sponsor gave $18,000, and another sponsor something very large also. So we do encourage sponsorships because last year we came out of pocket a tremendous amount of money. Here's, before I forget to tell the Olam, Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av you can learn the Daven, talking about the Churban in גיטה, Daven Nun Vav to Nun Ches, available on all Daf and YouTube and all the other platforms. All right, the Koilol for the week, this is the last day, by Yedidya Pereira. If it's possible not to type during share, I'd really appreciate it. Please daven for padion שבויים, יונתן, יהודה, מיכל, incarcerated, denied bail in Ireland. I heard a crazy story. People told me the story. He's a male who didn't realize that it was you have to be a doctor in order to do Mila, and it was somebody that wasn't even Jewish that fooled him into doing the bris, and then immediately called authorities on him. The Masechta for the safe and speedy return of all the hostages, and the Siyum, by the way, for the Masechta is part of the Shabbaton, December 20th to the 22nd, Parashas Vayeshev. Parashas HaChodesh, last day, Levi Yitzchok, Zechraya ben Moshe, Levi Yitzchok, Zechraya bas Yosef. Parashas HaChodesh, Yedidya Pereira, please Daven for padion שבויים again. Yonatan Asher, Yehuda, Michal, incarcerated, denied bail in Ireland. Mendy Schmerling, in honor of my father's yahrzeit. The 8th of Av, Levi Yitzchok ben Boruch Bendit Schmerling. In zchus of Avraham ben Biylai, who's having a major operation on the 12th of August. A young kid, Tzanacham Avraham ben Biylai should have a Refuah Shleima. For complete Refuah for Bracha, Avigal, גיטה, and by the Epstein Kamiansky families in memory of Rita Epstein, who was my neighbor, who lived directly below me, 2 floors below me, very young woman who was nifter, Dr. Epstein's wife, Rezel Gittel Bas Ze'ev, Harnas HaChodesh for zachus, the art of the month. Oh, Rabbi Sai, we have somebody that took upon himself the art of the month for 3 months for one of the artists. We have 3 full-time artists for zachus, for Reb Eli and the whole MDY staff to continue to make Torah so enjoyable for so many. Shkoyach, thank you so much. Tiskel mitzvahs, it gives a lot of chizuk. We have a phenomenal daf today, very, very famous sugi from Amud Beis, the sugi of Tluya v'Zabin. Here's a question that I asked the other day. If somebody forces a woman to accept a ring, it says, Arad Mekudeshes Li, and she doesn't say anything. Is she Mekudeshes or not Mekudeshes? He grabs her arm, he puts a ring on her finger, says, Arad Mekudeshes Li, and she doesn't say a word. L'chayra, it's Kiddushin. So let's see. We're holding 5 lines from the bottom of Memzano Amud Beis. Omer Avuna. Tal yu v'zabin zvine zvine. If you hang somebody, here we actually have a little bit of art today, this exact story. It goes something like this. I don't like this sound so much. Without the sound. But okay. The point is that you hang a guy by his feet and you beat him down a little bit, and he agrees to sell you something. Is that a good sale or not? So Ravuna holds it works. Tell you v'zabin zvina zvine. You're going to see some of the logic behind it soon. My taima called the zabin inish. The reason is because anytime a person sells anything he owns, if he sells his car, he sells a bike, he sells a computer, why is he selling it? Because he's desperate for money. Ilav da anis have him zabin. If not for the fact that he needs money, he wouldn't sell. So you see that every sale has a little bit of an oinus to it, and it works. It works, so too over here, so somebody forced you. So what are you going to ask? What's the obvious question? When you sell something, you do it on your own. You want to sell, so you don't feel comfortable selling it, but you're selling it. Over here, somebody's forcing you with a gun to your head. So it's very interesting. How do you bring this into something practical? So there's halacha that if you miss mincha, let's say, you had a einus, some sort of whatever it is, you couldn't make it to mincha. So you daven tushmon esrei ma'ariv. Let's say you overslept shachris, you had a einus. So you daven tushmon esrei mincha. What if you're in a meeting? You're in a business meeting, and your boss is there, and you're concerned that if you leave the meeting to go to mincha, you're going to lose your job. Is that? I was going to call you. Where are you, Simi? I need you, especially a day like today. You hear the shaila? Simi, it's a gewaldige shaila. A person is in a business meeting, and he realizes he's going to miss mincha. But if he leaves the meeting, he's concerned that he might lose his job. Is that considered an oinus? Is it enough in an oinus that he could daven tushmon esreis at Ma'ariv? No, what do you say? You say it's enough of oinus. There's another similar shaila, a very famous shaila. Now you're saying something else. You wouldn't be able to daven. Interesting.
I thought it was only you daven tushmon esreis if you forget. Not that like you thought about it and you're like, oh, I'll just do it later.
Oinus means you were forced. You couldn't. You had a big problem. Not that you forgot. That's also one of the forgetting is a type of an oinus. How do you translate oinus in English? An emergency. A mishap. What? Unavoidable mishap. That's the question if it's unavoidable. The famous tshuva that they asked Rav Moshe Feinstein. A guy recommended a certain job to his friend where he himself works, but he himself doesn't go to work with a yarmulke on. So that's Moshe Feinstein if he's allowed to take the job interview and not wear his yarmulke. And also, if he gets the job, does he have to wear his yarmulke or not? So Moshe, and the question was that if he wears his yarmulke, he's very likely he won't get the job. Not only that, the guy that recommended him might lose his job as well. So Moshe Feinstein said that since it's a loss of money, and the thing of a yarmulke is a minhag. There are those who argue, but that's what Moshe said. It's a minhag, so therefore, if it's a loss of money, he doesn't have to wear his yarmulke to work. And I think a lot of people take that, they run with it. But this is the idea of, you see from this Gemara, they want to prove from this Gemara that losing money is considered oinus. Because the Gemara says here, every time you sell something, you are forced to sell it as some sort of oinus, and you're doing it to make money. So the Gemara says we can make a distinction. There's a big difference between something that you yourself decide on your own to do. You want to sell your car. Okay, you don't like it. It's not comfortable, but you do it. Versus a guy putting a gun to your head, hanging you by your feet on a tree, and forcing you to sell. Ella, perhaps you bring a raya from a karba. Daf Yomi Amud Aleph, here's the pasuk. It says, so first it says, you shall bring the carbon. Third pasuk in Parshas Vayikra and Chumash Vayikra. Al Pesach Hayom Moed, Yakriv Vaisai. So you see the Yakriv Vaisai is double. It already says Yakriv Venu. So what's Yakriv Vaisai? It's the same idea. You shall bring the carbon. And then it says L'rtzaynai, with your will. So the Gemara says Melamed Shekayfen Oisai Yakriv Vaisai. The reason why the Torah repeats itself is to tell you that we force you to bring a carbon. In the case you don't want to bring a carbon, even if the pasuk is talking about a carbon oila, which is a voluntary carbon, but let's say you have to bring a carbon oil, you made a neder, you don't want to bring it, so we force you. Then it says, it's with your will. So which one is it? Are you being forced or are you doing it willfully? So Gemara says, the famous Gemara, it's both. We force you until you say, I want. So that we'll have in a minute. So there's the famous Rambam that explains this idea. He says it by a get, but we could say it, which is in 2 minutes. The Rambam says, person that doesn't want to divorce his wife. He wants to be a good Jew. He wants to do all mitzvahs and to distance himself from the averis. Why does a person do an avera? Because he has a yetzer hara. So you take a stick, you beat the yetzer hara out of him, and then he's left as a good Jew. Once you hit him, until his yetzer hara becomes weak, and that's considered garesh l'rtzaynai. Then he divorced her willfully. The beating up is not to do it against his will; it's to get rid of the yetzer hara. Doesn't really work with the selling over here. The first words of the Amud, it says Yakriv Vaisai. So some of the Bala Musar say that Yakriv Vaisai, we don't have karbanas in our days. But what a person could do in our days is Yakriv Vaisai. He sacrifices a little bit of his Isai, of himself. Person, instead of eating 5 pieces of chocolate, he only eats 4. So he sacrificed a little of himself for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's today's carbon. A person wants to do an avera, let's say. He doesn't do it. He says, Hashem, I'm not going to do this. I'm doing this for you. I'm being makar of something of myself to you. That's the carbon of our days. Okay, Zad, what do they call it? The tainus harayvad, yeah? Something similar. You leave something on your plate. That's your tainus. That's your little fast for today. You're not going to finish the whole plate. Says the Gemara, you can't bring a raya from a carbon because every Jew wants forgiveness. He wants a kapara. Yeah, but right. So that's why I said in the oil itself, you made a nether. You're going to bring the oil. So you need that kapara. You need that. You have to get out of your nether. But it's a general rule in korbanos anyways. We'll force you to take a chatos. This pasuk is said by oil. We also force you to bring a chatos. Same thing we find by a get. The famous story here in Chicago. He's not alive anymore, but the Rav of Chicago, they took the guy, they put him in the bathtub, till he said, Roitzani. In Eretz Yisrael, the Batidinim have a little bit more power than the Bezdin over here. Over there, they could take away your license, they could force you to go, they tell the police and you go to jail. They have different tricks over there. A little bit more power than over here. But here's a shiloh also, it's a Negel Maisa. Do you sell chametz? You do mechir. You're a rav. Do you sell the chametz of a non-religious Jew that has a store, and you know that on Pesach he's going to be open and he's going to sell chametz? Do you sell his chametz or not? He wants to. He goes through the motions every Pesach. He sells his chametz. But last year he's open during Pesach. The year before, and he sells chametz. What do you do? Shalom Aleichem. We have 42 people on Zoom. So Shalom Aleichem to the people on YouTube. YouTube or Zoom? Somebody else on it now? You're on? It's YouTube. How many people are on? 40. I have 44 actually. Oh, jumped down to 41. Givaldic. Okay. So they say that yes, you should sell because of the same concept of the Rambam, that it's just the Yetzirah that the guy has. The guy has he's not religious, he has a Yetzirah, but at the end of the day, he wants to sell his chametz, so he sells his chametz. Stealing?
Let's say you have a non-religious Jew and you sell their chametz.
Mm-hmm.
They take it, they're stealing from the goy. But that's not as bad as if they were...
As eating chametz?
Yeah. As owning chametz, right.
Yeah, but who's buying it? You're buying chametz when? On Pesach?
Let's say I go to the rabbi and they say, I want to sell chametz from my goy.
I get it, but who's buying the chametz on Pesach? The Jew is buying it?
No, he's stealing it. He sold it to the goy. Maybe he doesn't even know I sold it for him.
Are you saying the owner himself is stealing from the guy? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, but the question is, do you get involved with such a thing? Why would you go sell something for somebody that you know he's not going to keep it anyway? So based on this Rambam, you could say yes. He just has the Yetzirah problem. Says the Gemara,
Who knows? One day maybe he'll keep it.
But right now he's not. Okay, says the Gemara, V'dil Mashani Hasam. Maybe you can make a distinction. The mitzvah l'shmoy divrei chachamim. The reason why we force him is because there's a mitzvah to listen to chachamim. There's a guy that wasn't so good at listening to chachamim. His daughter was going to marry a guy, and he decided, there's a few stories like that. They brought the guy, the chassim, before he married to Reb Shtema. This story is Daven. The girl wanted to marry a guy, and they brought her to the Rav. And the Rav tried to convince her. And Sinish Gigangen, he couldn't convince her. So the father's waiting outside. Knew how did it go? He says, I'll tell you. Mushal's like this. There's a guy that was a doctor. He's traveling from one city to the other city, and he had a lot of medicine with him. He had a lot of cash, and the robbers came and they attacked him. And they took everything he had, and they left. When we got to the city, the head robber guy is like, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. My son is dying. I need medicine." She says, "I'm sorry. Your guys, they robbed me on the way. They have the medicine." So he started crying. He said, "What are you crying? It's your guys. It's your fault." So the Rav said to the guy, "Your whole life, you made fun of the rabbis. Now that you want me to convince the daughter, she also makes fun of the rabbis. You can't have tainus." Mitzvah l'shmoy divrei chachamim. Elo, so the Gemara says, svarahu. It's logic. Pure logic. Forget the psukim, forget the korbanos. Logic. Now what? Agavunse gamar makna. A person, but we have to stick in something here. It's very important. There's a different Akudah. The Gemara says one thing, but we also have to add a little bit. The Gemara says that a person with being forced by a gun, he gives it over. He's makna the thing. He agrees to the kinyan. He agrees to sell it with money. The combination of receiving cash and a gun to the head, those two things, Gomaru makna. Yeah, if you only have one out of the two, it doesn't work. Without cash, not. Because he received money, he got a good compensation for it. Plus, he was forced, so he does it. He does a key. Moise Rabbi Yehuda, get hamusa, a forced get, the Yisrael kosher. If a Jew forced the get, it's kosher. Uba'akum puzzle, but if a guy forced it, it's no good. Now we have to pause. There's like a period here. Now a new thing. Uba'akum, but there is a way that a guy can force a get. If the guy says, we're doing it exactly like the Jews want you to do it, we're just beating you up. I said this myself, I'll say it again. I witnessed when I was about 15 years old, there was a guy that didn't want to give a get to his wife, and I saw how two guys, they weren't Jewish, they cornered him, and they said, you got to give a get. So the guy pulled out a knife. He was expecting them, and he stabbed them. But these guys were killers. This is what they did for a living. So when they got stabbed, they got really mad. They were told not to hurt him. But because he hurt them, so they beat him up really, really bad. And the other part I didn't see, but I heard that they took him and they threw him out on Coney Island Avenue, right in front of the hospital over there, the Coney Island Hospital. Somebody found him there, and they brought him in. They did all these x-rays. He was beat up really bad. He ended up giving the get, but because they beat him up, he was saved because he had cancer or whatever, and they detected the cancer. That was a side story to this thing. But I saw this. Agavunse gomer megarish. And these are goyim. The goyim said, in that case, they said, you better sign the get. You do it like the Jews said that you should do it. Agavunse gomer megarish. There's a very famous person that was a little bit involved, I guess, in that story. He's in jail now they caught him. The FBI, he was like forcing גיטה in New York, and then I guess the FBI got on his case and they found him, and he's still sitting in jail, I believe. So says the Gemara, Umatam Omru Bakum Pasul. Oh, did I skip? Afilu Bakum, no. Uba'akum, yeah, Uba'akum, where the hay is. This is la halacha. And if you have a guy that you want to get to work, then it works. Now the Gemara goes back to the first halacha. Why is the get not a get when the guy does it without the Jewish mindset? Just the guy wants you to get divorced. But according to what you're saying, we should say, the guy gave the get willingly. Because he was forced. And you said forcing is good. It works. Now, the Rashbam sticks in a very important piece here. He says, what does this guy have to lose? What's the case? The case is that the woman wants to get divorced, and they're forcing the husband to divorce her. So the husband has nothing to lose, says the Rashbam. Why? Yeah. He anyways is not going to be married to her. So what does she gain? She gains that she can marry somebody else. He doesn't lose anything. He's not going to be with this woman forever. So he might as well just divorce her and finish. And he has nothing to lose. They forced him and it works. Says the Gemara, you're right. The guy could force a Jew to give the divorce, according to what we said. To live is oven, zvina works. But we explained how come it doesn't work. You're right, it should work when a guy forces to get his good get. Why? Because the Jew doesn't lose anything. His wife wants to divorce him anyway. So why do we say that's puzzle? How's it puzzle? Should go be mizana with the guy and tell the guy, go force my husband to divorce me. And he'll beat him up. We don't want this to happen. Every woman that wants to get the divorce from her wife, she'll go to the local guy, pay him up, or do whatever she has to do, and it'll force the husband to divorce. We don't want that. Again, we're talking about today, Erev Tisha B'Av. That's the whole sugya in Gittin. It starts with the Sikrika and kamsa bar kamsa. If a guy buys property from a bad guy, a guy that kills people, he forces people to sell stuff, and if not, he kills them. And after he does a deal with the guy, and he goes up to the Jew and he pays him. Does it work or not? Doesn't work at all. As the Gemara if Taliyu v'zavan zvina zvina, we should say agavunze gomor makne, because he was forced at gunpoint, so he willingly gave it up. Says the Gemara, yeah, that's a shaila, like in Germany, when the Nazis Yimach Shemam took property from the Jews. Does it become the Germans or not? If a guy has the authority to kill you, so perhaps, I'm not passing in halachas now, I'm just throwing something out. Because we take it for granted, no, it's not the Germans. They took it forcefully. But if a guy has the power to kill you, if you don't give it to him, then maybe the Jew willingly gave it even though he's a guy and even though he was going to kill. There's such a svara, such a halacha. Akupanim over here, maybe over here also there's a aynus. When does it not work? When the owner says, go, he says words, go make a kinyan. When a Jew, when he's forced at gunpoint, he writes a shtar, it works, the kinyan works. Why does it work? Because it shows that he's involved, he wants to sell it. He's writing a shtar for this. Shmuel says that even if there's a shtar written, it's not a kinyan. The Jew doesn't want to do it. The chayra means even if there's money involved, he doesn't want. If the Jew received money, then Shmuel agrees that he's gomar u'makne nafshei, he's willing to do a kinyan. Says the Gemara, the ganav himself doesn't get the karka, and the money that he paid for it, you give it back to him. Says the Gemara, Rabibi memru, Rabibi doesn't have to hold. It's not a brisa, it's not a mishnah, it's just a saying. So he's mechulik on that. Says the Gemara Marava, Hilchasot lu'ib zabin zvina zvine. There's a halacha that if you hang somebody and you cause him to sell you whatever object it is, it's a mechira. I'm scared to say this joke because the Israelis, they laughed, but it could be it was 1:30, it was close to 1 o'clock in the morning. So it could be they were like this. I didn't think it was so funny, but they were laughing for 5 minutes. I'll tell you the joke, it's not that funny, but there's a nutcase in the Beis Mishagayim. He saved his friend from drowning in a bathtub. So they call him into the office, they say, listen, we want to release you from the Beis Mishagayim. He did such an exemplary thing, it's unbelievable. He saved the guy. But we have bad news. The guy's dead. We found him hanging. So he says, oh, that was me. After I took him out of the bathtub, I hung him to dry. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm telling you, that's what it was. This taliyah is often hanging somebody and getting a deal out of it is only when it's a field. Beside the stam, when it's, he didn't say which one. Beside the zoo, when he points to the field and he says, I want this particular, and puts a gun to his head. He says, I want this field, it doesn't work. So the Gemara Svar is like this. If there's a bunch of fields, and you yourself go ahead and pick one and give the guy with the gun one of the fields, so now you did it willingly. But if the guy forces you to this field, it doesn't work. And when it comes to this field, it doesn't work when the guy doesn't count the money. But if he counts the money, then that means that he does it willingly. In other words, if, I don't know, anybody grew up in New York? You have that ready? Who grew up in New York? You grew up in New York. You had mafia guys on your block? Different neighborhood. Anyway, when I was young, there's always stories about the mafia this, mafia that. There was always a guy dead in this street, that street. We lived next to Bensonhurst. Our neighbor was a guy in the mafia that we bought a house from the mafia. They used to come check if the guy's still there. Every few weeks they would knock on the door. Yo, is Tony here? That's so there was always this pachad from the mafia. Mafia guys always if the mafia said sell the house, you sell the house. You don't ask questions. It was like, if not, you find yourself. There's a guy in Faraka we were very close with. He disappeared like for 20 years. 20 years. They found this body. Later on, one of the cops, he was a dirty cop, and he said that he was involved and they buried a Jew in a parking lot. They did this parking structure, and they broke the cement and they found him there after 20-something years. Anyways, so that's how it used to be. So if a mafia guy says, sell me this thing right now and here's some cash, you don't sit there in front of him and go, 1, 2, 3. You don't care. Whatever he gives you. You should be happy he gave you some cash. Usually they don't give you cash. Today they give you cash. If you're going to count the cash, that means that you're involved, you're willing, the whole thing. So yeah, in the Hebrew shir, I said the story. Just to be fair, I'll say the story. It has almost no connection here, but I don't think I ever said the story. But it's an interesting story. When we moved to Israel, one of my sons got into a lot of trouble with the law. He beat somebody up, and they got into a lot of trouble. And basically, we're dealing with this story for over 2 years, and lawyers, and back and forth, jail, not jail, whole maisa. So one of the crazy things that happened during this whole story, I went to this very famous lawyer. His name is Sassi Getz. And I said, yeah, could you help me with my son, and this and that? It's very expensive. Then he didn't do anything. And one day, Sassi's secretary calls me up and says, Sassi wants to speak to you. So it's okay. Sassi gets on the phone and he says, hey, Eli, what's going on? Yeah, your son. He tells me my son's name. You remember he came to my office? Yeah. He says, listen, it might be your lucky day. I'm dealing with the prosecutor right now, and I told her about it and this and that. Listen, if you could get me $20,000 today, I could do a deal for you with her. No question. I said, what deal? He says, only, 2 months of community service and this and that. I said, no, it's too much. I'm negotiating. He said, okay, let me see what I can do. He calls me back. The secretary, again, she calls, the whole thing, puts me through. I can do it. 1 month community service, but I needed $20,000 today. So I said, okay, I'll come down to Tel Aviv. I'll be there in 2 hours. So finally, Baruch Hashem, the story's going to be over. So he says, no, you don't have to come to Tel Aviv. You remember the other lawyer from the office, so-and-so? I said, yeah. He said, he lives right next to Bet Shemesh. He'll come by soon. He'll pick it up. I said, okay, Givaldik. As soon as I hang up, I said, what, the guy from Bet Shemesh? What's he being so? So I call him back. Sassi, what's going on? He says, who's this? I said, it's Eli. He says, Eli who? I said, Eli, the one you spoke to a minute ago. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, what? Didn't we just have a deal? He says, don't give him the money. Don't. He just took $100,000 from somebody else. What is going on here? Anyway, so I run to the police station. I tell the cops, I tell the detective, I said, some guy is trying to scam me for $20,000. He knows everything about my son's case. Everything. He's pretending he's this. So I said, look, we're milled into Fada. We don't have time for this. And as he's talking to me, my phone rings. So I said, it's him. He says, let me have the phone. Let me hear. And the guy says, okay, should I come now? I'm coming. I'm an hour away. So the detective says, okay, if he's coming now, go home, give him the money. Don't worry about it. Okay? So I go home, and there's a knock on the door. It's 2 cops. They say, where can we hide? And they hid inside my house in a closet and that. And then a few minutes later, the guy shows up on a motorcycle with a helmet and everything. He knocks on my door. I go, and the cop told me I should write a note. So I wrote a note. I, so-and-so, I'm taking the money for Sassi Guest, $20,000. Okay. He says, okay, where's the money? So I said, I go get the money. He starts counting the money. That's why I remember it, because Artzi Zuzek count the money. He starts counting the money. All of a sudden, the closet opens up. 2 cops pop out. He says, okay, you're under arrest. So he goes like this. 1 minute. He goes like this. I'm in the middle of counting. Shah. He keeps on counting. He didn't realize that they said, you're under arrest. And he just kept on counting. Anyway. So then, he's like, stop what you're doing. You're under arrest. Give us your hands. And they took him out of there in front of the whole neighborhood. I was nervous. They're going to come. And kids are. So that was the story. So, now we can do it. Sponsored by Sasi Gez. No, sponsored by Stroll Share, Construction Management and Supervision, and the Life Share Community, protecting families today before tomorrow's unexpected loss. And by Kidnovations LLC, in honor of my Uncle Reb Elchanan Pressman, official, the zachus for Akiva Simcha Ben Fayga, and Yehuda's bas, Zechariah. They should both have shiduchim, b'karev. So the Gemara. If you can't get out of it, if you don't have a good excuse, if you had a good excuse to get out of it, why don't you use the excuse? So what's a good excuse? You're not going to believe this. The Rambam says, what's a good excuse? You tell him, wait until tomorrow. You know, I'm not a car salesman, but I know that if you go to buy a car and the guy says, "No, you want to buy the car?" So what does everybody say? I have to ask my wife. That the guy knows you're never coming back. I have to ask my wife. So the Rambam says that's the excuse. You should have used, I have to ask my wife. I'm waiting for my wife. If you don't use that excuse, then it's a good sale. If they hang you by your feet and they put a gun to your head and you sell it, it's a good sale. Even all these exceptions that we said on top of the Amud, that it's, if you say in this field, no, it has many. Why? Even if you say this field and they take this field, it's a good sale. Why? A single woman is like this field. You're not saying I want to marry one of these two women. I want to marry you, and I force the kiddushin on her. That's like one field. So you have a kaddish, kiddusha of kiddushin. So we have a little bit of this. Oh, I didn't show it. Hold on, let me just do it again. The kid says she was hung by her feet and she was forced to accept kiddushin. It works. And if it works by a woman or it works by a field. Happens to be, I'll just throw this out there. I know a few people, just recently, that basically put a lot of pressure on their daughters to get married. And they got married. And it ended up being a divorce. You know about this?
I know stories about it.
You know stories.
Just recently.
Just recently. It's mamish till you Kaddish. The girl didn't feel like she should get married to this guy, and the father said, no, do it. I'll come to you afterwards. You'll get used to it. And then, it's Cain. It's a mashal of Tiyuv Kaddish. You have to be careful. And I'm talking about in a Litvish thing. By Hasidim, Alachas Kam Kam, I'm sure it happens. Says the Gemara, Mar Baravashi, Omar Be'isha, Vadi Kiddushin Lo Yahavu. Not true. When you force a woman to get married and she accepts the kiddushin, it doesn't work. Now, what would be the svara, by the way, that it does work? Because you paid her, you gave her the kiddushin, and she benefits from being married. The paying part, okay, we say it's just a pruta, it's just a kinyan, but she benefits. She gets room and board. So says the Gemara, Bisha Vada Kiddushin Lo Yahavu. Now, Mar Baravashi argues, says doesn't work by a woman. It should work. Technically, it should work. Halachically, it should work. But Rabbanan said it doesn't work. Why? Because he acted inappropriately. So we're going to act with him inappropriately. I'm just thinking to myself, like, what kind of marriage is this going to be? Grabs a woman, hangs her on a tree, and you have to marry me. No. What? A marriage? No. So b'chachamim, they said it's not a marriage. Rabbanan are able to uproot the whole kiddushin. How? How do they do it? With this. With hefker, bezin hefker. Rabbanan say that the ring, the money that you gave for the kiddushin, wasn't even yours. It's hefker. Somebody else's. You never gave her anything. Ask the Gemara, Tenach the Kodesh B'Kaspa. That's great if you used Kesef for the Kiddushin. Kodesh B'Biyah, Michael Meimar. How can you ignore the fact that there was an act here You can't uproot the act. They can uproot the act. Not that they uproot and they say the act never happened. They said the act was a ma'isa of znos, not a ma'isa of kiddushin. What does that mean? Because if you look over here, we all very familiar. When you mekadosh a woman, even bebia, you say it should be like the ratzon of chachamim, like the halacha. And chachamim, the bezdin, they're going to say that no, this was an act of znos, not an act of kiddushin. Says the Gemara. Is she considered a grusha? Yeah, no, nothing, zero. Yaprut lechatchila. Chachamim have the right to uproot it. Now, if she could literally go marry a kohen, probably. Forget the kohen. Could she marry another man? Much worse than a kohen. Could she marry another man? What's worse, marrying a kohen or marrying a ish? And we're saying she's not a ish. Says the Gemara, Tavi Talala Papi Akinor V'Zavin. There's a bad guy named Tavi. He was a very tough man. And he literally took this guy Papi, hung him up on a tree, on a Kinora tree. And he bought stuff from him. Says the Gemara, Chosam Rabba Babarachana Midah Bashkalta. Rabba Babarachana signed 2 documents. Document number 1 is called a Midah. What's a Midah, Rabbi Isai? Midah. It's a document that you tell Adam, you say, listen, I'm about to be forced at gunpoint. I know that the mafia is down the block. They're going to do X, Y, Z to me. They're going to take away my stuff. I'm telling you right now, I don't want to sell to them. I'm going to tell them I'm selling it to them, and I'm not selling it to them. When do we do, Rabbi say, we all do a Midah. When do we do Midah? No. Try good. Anybody? Hataras Nadarim. We do it in every Rosh Hashanah. Haredi Moisim Midah. Mikano Lahaba. Anything that I say, it's a Moisim Midah. I'm telling you right now. So, found this in the Siddur. Here's from the, I don't know how to pronounce his name, this Rebbe. You have to, when you say Shem Hashem, you have to be mechaven, at least according to the Vilna Gaon, the basic things, Adonai Kol. Hoya hoy v'viyah, but Adonai Kol. Hoya hoy v'viyah. Because the Adnos shu Adonai Kol. According to the Vilna Gaon, only in Kriya Shema you have to say Hoya. You have to think Hoya hoy v'viyah. But according to everybody else, if it says Yud Kei Vav Kei, you have to say, you have to think to yourself Hoya hoy v'viyah. Ukshas Hashem Elokim shu tak v'bal yechoyz v'bal yechoyz kulam. He adds these words. I don't know where he got it from. Ilas kol ilas v'sivas. I'm pretty sure in Shulchan Aruch it's only brought down. Fine. Upon him, he's being moiser meidah because a lot of people you say, you're not thinking about Hashem Hashem, Adonai Kol, you're flying. He's saying, listen, you don't want to be over on saying Hashem Hashem without a kavanah. So I'm being moiser meidah right now, at least for today. I don't know if it works. That's what he says. Being moiser meidah, I'm mechaber. So that's moiser meidah. Do you need to see this silly video? No. So I'll just say it while I'm without sound is better. So he's hung on a tree. The guy says, if you don't sell me your field, I'm going to kill you. He says, fine, I'll sell you the field. He runs to Rabbi Elchanan and says, Rabbi Elchanan, please sign on this document that the point is, he didn't mean to work out, he just wanted to get the food. Or he didn't mean to sell, he just had a gun to his head. So, he told Rabbi Elchanan, I don't want to sell. Please remember, I'm not selling. So Rabbi Elchanan signed a document called the Midah document. And then he signed the document, the Ashkalta, which is the shtar that says that the field is sold. Omer Avuna, man dechosim hamidah, shapir chosim. Rabbi Elchanan that signed the Midah, what does that do? That means that there's zero sale. Perfect. Uman dechosim Ashkalta, and the one that signed on the document of sale, shapir chosim, which is a contradiction. If you have a Midah, then you don't sell. And if you sell, there's no Midah. So which one is it? Says Gemara, Ilav moida, man the chosam ashkalta shapir chosam. There's a tremendous chiddush here, Rabbi Yisai. The guy was hung by his feet on a tree and was forced to sell, and he sold. Does it work or doesn't work? It works. That's the chiddush. The chiddush is that I sign a real document, it'll work. Till you have zavin zvina zvina. However, in this case, it doesn't work. Why? Because there was a maidah. So that's what the Gemara says. Ilav maidah. Without the maidah, then man dechazam ashkat shapir chasam. It would work. And with this, we'll finish here. Rabbi Yisai, have a wonderful day. Have a meaningful Tisha B'Av. We should see the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash beKorov.